Hey guys, it's Chris with Drop Dice. Today what I'm doing is just kind of a random thought video where I'm going to discuss what happened with my playthrough of Fantasy Age. So last night I started an offline, well, it's online but not recorded, um, game, 6-part game of Fantasy Age, and talking with the GM, Brennan, who's in L5R. He wanted to do Fantasy Age, but we suggested doing a 6-part little mini adventure where every game we level up. That way we could try out the mechanics, get a couple levels in, and get a feel for the game as a whole. Um, so let me talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, and where my opinions may have changed a little bit on Fantasy Age. First off, my character was originally rolled up. I wanted to be a rogue. I had this in mind that I wanted to be a knife fighter, and so I picked the rogue class, and I thought that would be a good way to go because a lot of games when you go and build a knife fighter, it's actually better to be a rogue than it is to be a warrior. Um, just overall, it works out to be a little bit better. The problem that I came across was it was actually a little bit better, at least for combat skills or combat talents and things like that, for me to have gone warrior because I had a thug rogue in mind, not necessarily a rogue rogue. Um, like start with those warrior, a little bit more hit points from warrior, a little bit more the fighting combat styles, and then pick up talents later on that would reflect my rogue-like nature for my character. But I don't really regret building the way I did. Just kind of an observation that it looks like if you want to build a thug rogue, it's almost better to build in the warrior and then tack on roguely abilities than build in the rogue and tack on combat abilities because you'll get those a little bit slower on the rogue side. That's really the only difference that I saw there. Um, Let me give you a rundown of our party. So there's me. I'm a dilettante, which basically means a lazy rich kid um, who drinks a lot and parties. We have Jeremy, who's playing a full blood orc, who's my stepbrother, and I'm the heir to the kingdom. He's been squired off as a way for my mother to kind of get rid of the orc from the household. Um, and then we have Murdoch playing a kind of cleric flavored mage, and then we have Tom playing also a cleric flavored mage, and Murdoch is healing in fire. Tom is healing in lightning, and let me open up the Fantasy Age book real quick here. Let me tell you what we did to the game and why it was actually a blast playing this game like this. If you go to Fantasy Age, and in the back of the book, it comes with a pre-written adventure, which looks like I have the wrong book open here. But the pre-written adventure, essentially, what it does is it eventually I'll get used to this whole iPad thing. Um, what it does for you is instead of I'll deal with that later. So instead of playing the adventure entirely as written, we decided to have a little fun with it. So if you look at the adventure, the definition of what the adventure is supposed to be is basically these kids are being. There was this old tradition where there was a lord who used to take people to choose them to be part of their court, and this this woman that ruled the land, basically, she during this time of year, during the choosing season, she would pull young men and women and say, okay, you could be my maids, you can be my guards, blah blah blah. So we we heard that and we were joking around because the basic premise is that practice is no longer held, but people still go to the island, and it's kind of a last hurrah before you become an adult. And the way that we were originally kind of thinking of it is kind of like how with people who are Amish, they get their one free ticket out into the real world, and they can make their decision if they want to come back to the society. And that's how I originally was looking at it. And then we kind of brought up that the plot line sounds like a teen movie, and so we were joking around saying we were playing not another teen movie, the RPG. And so my character Armand, because he was a dilettante anyways, I was like, yeah, I could be the rich jock kid who's like pushing people around and be like, nerd. So we totally played up that. Jeremy's character, who was the squire, was the tough guy with a heart of gold who's kind of shy. Um, Murdoch and Tom played like two rival nerds that the best part is we established outside of character that the two gods that they worship are this in fact the same god. It's just a dichotomy. And the joke is like if you remember from Star Trek, there was the two beings, the one that was like white. They were both white and black, but one was white on the left side, one was black on the left side. We were joking around saying that was the avatar of their gods, and so they were making jokes like, "You're jealous because my god's left on the white and right on the right on the left," stuff like that. And it was really funny because Murdoch and Tom were trying to one up each other, and because of dice rolls, Murdoch kind of had the upper hand, and it was really funny because Murdoch's character also happens to be the poor kid. The rest of us rolled nobles. Um, and as we were playing along, we got to do stuff, and I'm not sure if it's actually in the adventure because I haven't read it. I decided I wasn't going to even look at it until we were done, just to see what the adventure was supposed to be. But there was this cliff where we could jump off, and it was really funny because Brendan, as the GM, he did something I really liked. So we get to the island, and he's like, "What do you guys want to do?" I'm like, "Well, as the cool kid, I know where the spot is that we can jump off like a cliff face into the lake or river, and that's where all the chicks are going to be." And Brendan immediately took it and he rolled with it. Like I said, I don't know if that's on the map or not, if that's like legitimate or not, but he rolled with it. We had like a jump off the cliff thing, and then we did up the cliff side using climbing checks, and basically it was to show to work through some basic mechanics. And then, of course, because I'm playing, the asshole jock, like I hurled a bottle at the guy that was trying to cheat in the competition, and I still won anyways. It was a lot of fun. Um, One of the things that I noticed was kind of wonky was something that I complained about in the first video. If you remember watching that one, basically in Dragon Age, they've got like a reference sheet, which is basically a GM screen for everybody at the table, like the players and particularly the players, and it tells you like what the stunt charts are. It gives you some equipment stuff in there that you can easily reference. Like if you pick up a sword and you don't remember the stats off the top of your head, instead of having to dig through the book, you could just look at this quick reference chart. There's not one for Fantasy Age, and the one that's in Dragon Age translates mostly, but not completely. So what we ended up doing was is we would pull open the book and turn the book pages for the stunts, and it was a little wonky remembering that we had to go to 79 for the explorative and role playing stunts, but we had to go to page 33 the for the combat stunts, and so we were kind of shifting between because our scenes were going really fluid, which was actually a pro that I wasn't. I kind of expected because of watching different age games that it was going to be kind of a more fluid game, but it was a lot more fluid than I had expected in play. Like we would transition from role play to combat to role play, and there was a very little stagnation in between. Unlike Pathfinder, like or D&D, where it's kind of like a clean break, and it's like this is role play, this is combat, and you can still role play through it. But I think the mechanics were just light enough to really encourage this clean narrative flow. It kind of reminds me of the way Dungeon World works, where it is designed to be a clean narrative flow. I think the rules kind of help emphasize that style play. Now, if you're an experienced GM, you can do that no matter what system it is. I just think that these rules happen to help facilitate that, even for a new GM. And then we were playing through, and we went into combat, and combats were surprisingly short, um, but not in a bad way. It wasn't like we did a massive amount of damage. It was like, oh, here's some rolls. Okay, cool. Here's the stunts. What stunts do you use? And if I remember right, Jeremy got himself into a combat, and he ended up using like the lethal attack stunt, so he dished a ton of damage, and that was pretty much the end of that thing that he was fighting, which was like this weird zombie thing. Um, And then for the other like mini combat that happened, we got to do stuff like knock the guy prone, deal an extra d6 of damage, and I forget what the other thing was that I did. It was something else because I had 6 stunt points and I did 3 2-point ones, and it was really cool because it wasn't the traditional critical hit style where it's just like, oh, I deal more damage. It's, oh, okay, I can do this, that, and the other thing, and it was a little bit more advantageous. I think that's why I like stuff like the fighter that gets the combat maneuvers, the battle master, a lot from fifth edition because it's the same basic premise. You have a lot of dynamic combat use, and I think in fifth edition the fighter that uses the battle master stuff, um, it's good, and I think it's a little bit more advantageous to have a map, but it doesn't feel necessary. When you play Fantasy Age and you use the stunts, the map feels completely unnecessary. The stunts are super narrative driven, and we never questioned a map or even asked for one, which a lot of the players come from like a Pathfinder or D&D background, and so a lot of us use maps just generally in our games, and we just didn't really find a need or desire to have them in Fantasy Age. So that was kind of a positive note there. Um, as far as kind of the negative stuff, really that reference sheet is my big takeaway. I'd like to see something like that from Green Ronin, and if not, I will probably be doing some Photoshop work to make one for myself at least, just to copy the charts and put it on one document kind of thing. Um, but I overall really liked it. The feel of play, because I think that every game kind of has a tone to it if you play the way it's written, of course. Um, let's give it a comparative, because I said whenever I do a review, I'm going to compare to fifth edition D&D because that's what most people are going to be familiar with. I'm actually going to give it 3 comparisons. So for Pathfinder, it feels or Pathfinder and 3.5, they're all kind of in the same family, that 3X family. It feels very high adventure, high action, high damage, um, but not necessarily lethal. In fifth edition, it changes. It becomes a little bit lower on the high action scale. Like you can still do the action, but the mechanics aren't there to really encourage just this out of control, ideal like 4,000 damage kind of stuff that you can do in Pathfinder and 3.5. Instead, it's a little bit more streamlined and it's a little bit more straight to the point without all that kind of build up of feats and stuff like that. Um, I consider that kind of a medium tone as far as like action and lethality are concerned, because you're not. It's definitely more lethal than 3.5 and 3 and Pathfinder and stuff like that, but it's not as lethal as some other games like Legend of the Five Rings, where one hit you might be dead kind of deal. Um, in Fantasy Age, it's kind of in between. I would rank it somewhere in between 5th edition and 3X series. It's definitely more over the top, kind of, you can do a lot of action stuff, but it's definitely not towards the edge of doing tons of damage and craziness like that. Instead, it's more tactical advantage. It's more like almost like a combat focused video game, or maybe a movie, like a martial arts movie is what I equate it to in my head. It's more focused on building an interesting narrative when it comes to combat through your stunts and things like that. Um, the stunt mechanic was really easy to get. We got them, I want to say, at least 4 times during the game. Um, and I think the hardest part about the stunts was us picking out which stunts we wanted to use. And at first it was a little slow, and then when it came to like other stuff, like most of us had looked at combat beforehand but not the explorative roleplay stunts, and so it was like looking at the list going, which one should I use? And that was a little slow, but I think that that'll improve over time. So I've got a level 2 rogue now. So for anybody who's interested, I did decide to keep with that knife fighting tactic. I'm using a gauntlet in one hand and a knife in the other, And so far, I actually haven't touched combat, so I'm not sure how exactly I personally will do in combat. But I'm a little bit of a finesse fighter, so my accuracy is high, is what this game calls it. That was one of the things that I really liked about Fantasy Age when I did the read through, and I actually liked it a lot more during the gameplay. Was that you have the accuracy and fighting stats separate from your dexterity and strength. Um, the one thing that I was a little kind of weird about was if you use a finesse weapon, you still use a finessable weapon. It uses your accuracy to attack, but it still uses your strength to damage. Um, I don't know. Maybe there's a talent that I'm missing that I haven't read through quite thoroughly yet, but maybe there's a way to get accuracy to damage on a finessed weapon. If so, it's probably under dual weapon style or something like that, or possibly the duelist specialty. If not, I think I would probably add a way for that to happen in game. Um, because it does make it advantageous to just use a strength weapon with strength, or sorry, a fighting weapon with strength, um, just because your build makes cohesive sense that way. I don't know, just kind of random thoughts there. Oh, I lost my light. Um, well, we'll ignore that for now. Um, that's kind of my initial thoughts of playing through Fantasy Age. I thought it was a really awesome system. The game was super fluid. We played without taking breaks, and for my group, we're a little bit more beer and pretzel power gamer kind of players. I think that even though this was totally beer and pretzel, like not another teen movie RPG type game, we had a blast doing the role play for it, and so I thought that was really cool. I didn't know if that was maybe just because we were having fun with the concept of it being a teen movie RPG, or if it was the rules that kind of facilitated that. And I'm going to pay attention next game to see if maybe the rules were necessarily a facilitating factor, or maybe it's just us having a good time with the setting. Um, I'm always curious to see what I can do to get players to role play a little bit more. So I'll be watching that, and I'll let you guys know how I feel about it. Those of you who have noticed my blog entry from the last time that I did it, which I don't do those very often, I am looking at doing a Fantasy Age sci-fi conversion. And I found a Mass Effect conversion for Dragon Age, which I may be taking a look at. Or not Dragon. Sorry, it's a Mass Effect conversion from the Dragon Age system. And what I think I'm going to do is take a look over that book and, excuse me, I got hiccups now, kind of pluck things that I like out of that book. I'm going to go before my hiccups get too bad, because they're going to get real bad here in this minute. As always, I will see you guys at the gaming table. Thanks for tuning in, and like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Please don't beat me up too bad about my terrible hiccups here. All right, guys, thanks again. See you at the gaming table.